Hi guys, today we're going to talk about an interesting aspect of this Indian philosophy. Now in chapter 2 and chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, there are mentions of two distinct paths on how you can attain the Supreme. Traditionally there is three, but the traditional mention of it in chapter 3 is that of path of action and path of knowledge. Path of action and path of knowledge. Very, very similar, yet so different when you look at the literal meaning of it. Now the question that seems to be pertaining throughout this entire situation is path of knowledge superior to the path of action, or is it the other way around? Now you see, human beings, we have one kind of a very weird attitude. That is, when we are given two distinct paths, the moment our brain starts comparing on which is better, which is superior over the other. Now this thing is exactly what happens in the story of Mahabharata as well. The moment there are different paths, a human being starts comparing which one is more better, which one is more suitable. Now if it is suitable to oneself, then that is good decision making. But just comparison, that leads to a whole lot of confusion, doesn't it? Now before we go in detail about this, let us just first, slowly understand what these two distinct paths really mean. Now starting with path of knowledge. The path of knowledge is entirely about knowing yourself as a person. Now this knowing yourself as a person is much more than what meets the eye. For example, take this human body, the most complicated machine that is ever created on this universe. We can talk about all modern technology, AI, or whatever it is, but this will always be the most complicated machine that man has ever known. And to operate such a complicated machine, we need to have a reader's manual on how to operate such a thing. Because only when we know the nitty-gritties of how to operate it, only when we understand it, will we be able to realize the true potential of a human being. Because there are numerous stories, which I don't need to tell you, that suggest that the power of a human being is beyond imagination. It can do anything if its subconscious and conscious mind travel in the same plane. Now the subconscious mind always knows what the true knowledge is, but the conscious mind blinds it by the illusion of the world that we live in. Now this could be developed a bit by bit as we go along through the path of knowledge. Now that is why the path of knowledge is nothing more than a reader's manual to use the complicated machine known as a human body. But there is a slight difference when you compare that with the path of action. Path of action is all about performing a duty. You do it with all your heart, you do it with all your might, you work for a purpose. But the key word here is you do it with a sense of detachment. You do not get attached to the act that you're doing. Whatever work you're doing, whatever purpose it is, you're not feeling it from the heart that if it doesn't happen, I'm going to feel sad. If it succeeds, I'm going to be elated. No, you don't have that. If it works, good. If it doesn't work, well, still fine. That is the art of detachment that is being asked to follow in a path of action. Now here, we would always think that the path of knowledge and path of action are completely different. But they are two different roads that lead to the same goal as what is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Because these two goals of how you have to attain the Supreme depends upon the individual. If a person wants to probe more into the knowledge aspect of life, they would be more eligible and suitable rather to opt for the path of knowledge. If a person is more active in the works of life, they would choose the path of action as that suits and pertains to their individual nature. Now coming back to the Mahabharata, when Arjuna is asked, upon choosing either one of these paths, such as path of action and path of knowledge, he comes up with a real deal of confusion. Now, when Krishna says to Arjuna about the path of action in the starting of the 3rd chapter, and when he talks about the path of knowledge in the middle of the 2nd chapter, this brings about a sense of confusion. He says, on one side, you say that path of knowledge, I have to know myself and not be bothered about any other individual. And now you're asking me to engage in such a war where I'll be fighting to satisfy all my inner emotions. So what does that make me? This is the question that Arjuna is asking. Now, many people would always say, how can Arjuna question the Supreme and all that? But in reality, Arjuna has proven to be the best student because he not only refrained or shied away from the fact he didn't understand something, but he questioned it with authority. He said, you had mentioned this before and this is how I understood it. Now just imagine the modern world, people like us sitting in a classroom. Half the stuff they talk is just sounds. We really don't understand anything and we really don't question anything. Now, the mark of questioning is the sign of a really good student, and also the capability of a teacher is really aware here, where he questions which is the more suitable path. Now, the key word here is Arjuna refers to the path of action as attachment, whereas Krishna refers to the path of action as detachment. It could be misinterpretation, it could be miscommunication, or it could really be just a misunderstanding. But the art of questioning makes him realize the difference between why path of action is in no way different to the path of knowledge, but just the way we look at it is different. And in many ways, that's what philosophy says about life in general. The things appear to be the same for each and every individual, but how every individual views it might be completely different to another certain person. Now, this is a wrap for this particular episode, and always remember guys, it will always lead the way, and all you have to do is free your mind. And as always, thank you for watching, and until the next episode, it is goodbye.